The International Association for Near-Death Studies presents NDE Radio, a weekly exploration of near-death experiences and similar encounters with the other side. Now, here's your host, Lee Witting.
What does the healing power of physical light have to do with the light experience during an NDE? Does the phrase, as above, so below, apply as directly as that? And how are healing and love intertwined? Welcome to NDE Radio, brought to you by IANS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies. I'm your host, Lee Witting. Today's guest, Matthew DeBow, is an author and inventor who most recently has moved into medical device design and manufacturing. His first book, Light, Health Benefits and Medical Applications, describes the healing potential of light. And although he never personally experienced an NDE, last year DeBow released his second book titled Soul Code, Near-Death Experiences, Preconception Memories, Transformative Spiritual Events, Life Between Life Regression, Induced After-Death Communication. In this book, Matt compares a wide range of research studies from science, medicine, psychology, and theology, gathering data about the human soul. The thread that connects these experiences clearly shows a higher dimensional aspect of who we are, consistently, no matter what our personal beliefs are, atheist, agnostic, or religious. Matt, welcome to NDE Radio.
Thank you for having me, Lee. I appreciate it.
Well, this is a great little book you've written, Soul Code, but and one of the things you mentioned there is that although you haven't had an NDE yourself, your new book describes some paranormal experiences you had as a child, including a ghost you felt following you and a dream, or perhaps a vision of fairies playing in the yard with a dog. And you seem to have had a very early interest in the paranormal, so perhaps you could tell us something about that.
Yeah, at a pretty young age, I had some very interesting experiences, and I was just created a curiosity, an insatiable curiosity to understand the mind and what's going on in the world. And at a pretty young age, I started reading books about ESP and metaphysics and the paranormal. And when I came across the NDE, I found that, wow, this is really, really important information. And not only it was spiritually enlightening, but it actually gave me a better sense of who I was as a spiritual being in this physical body.
Mm. And how did you get interested in the healing power of light?
Well, I was writing an article for an independent California newspaper, a monthly newspaper, and I asked the editor, I said, well, I really want to do something on, different types of alternative healing. And so I wrote about lodestones, magnets, and RF frequency, inactivating pathogens and all these different things. And I came across light. And I thought, well, this is interesting. So the more I dug, the more I was perplexed by the power of light. And it's so interesting is when you take light and you take it down and create a monochromatic signal of light, like we have the full spectrum of light. And when you isolate light into specific wavelengths, it has an amazing dynamic on DNA. It hyper accelerates the healing response. And so that curiosity, I kind of chased that information down to a point where now recently I've gotten into the technology. NASA has used it for decades, and they've found that it accelerates healing tremendously.
Yes, I think you mentioned that perhaps the Russian athletes were using it.
Yep. Russian athletes were the first to really start utilizing, and it was a Russian named Tina Carew that actually did the first double-blind studies, and she found in a petri dish that cells would grow at a much faster rate. And it was just amazing. And now recently, it's become more and more mainstream because light somehow when it's a monochromatic signal activates the release of collagen, elastin, ATP, which is an energy carrier between cells, nitric oxide, not nitrous oxide, but nitric oxide, which is a vasodilator. And between those interactions, it speeds up the healing process.
I wonder why hospitals and other, Western medicine communities aren't using this more than they are.
It is kind of surprising because there are so many FDA approvals that utilize light, and the technology I'm talking to you about is called biostimulation, which is just one of several. There's another one called photodynamic therapy, where they inject a light-sensitive drug. The drug goes into the body systemically. They wait about 48 hours. Then they go in and for some reason, the fast-growing cells like tumors will uptake this light-sensitive dye. Then they go in with a very cool laser, a high-powered LED, and they literally just shoot that light at the tumors, cancer or other types of tumors, and it creates a photochemical destruction of that diseased tissue. And what's amazing is it activates these antigens, which kind of act like an inoculation and can go in and eliminate some of that other cancer in the body. It's an amazing technology. There's another technology called blood irradiation, where the Russians have used monochromatic lasers within the red wavelength, and then other people in the West here have used ultraviolet light. And what they found is when they run blood in front of the ultraviolet light, that it actually inactivates pathogens. And it's just amazing some of the technology that is out there. And hospitals and doctors are starting to use it. It's just a slow adopting process, and eventually, when they see the potential of all these different areas of light, I'm sure it'll kick into gear. I mean, some of the people I interviewed were amazing. When I interviewed Ronald Wyan from the FDA, he said that he knows at FDA headquarters, at their science, at their laboratories, that putting light on somebody's head or heart shortly after a heart attack or stroke will reduce the damage by 50% if you get it on quick enough after the incident. Wow. And another guy that I interviewed from New York Institute of Technology said that light has the potential to save billions of dollars on diabetic lesions alone. So it's amazing technology.
Now, you've heard, I'm sure, many reports from NDEers about going into the light, and that light and love were almost interchangeable. Do you see any parallels between the spiritual light of an NDE and the physical light that's can be so healing?
Well, because of my extensive research into the medical field of light and my research into the near-death experience and kind of associated spiritual transformational events, yes, I have seen a connection. Now, right off the bat, the first connection I've come across, which I think is very interesting, is that we as human beings have biophotons, and anybody can look this up on Wikipedia. Now, biophoton is actually we emanate light, and this light that we emanate scientifically is called ultra-weak chemiluminescence is the actual scientific term. And this ultra-weak chemiluminescent signal comes from the cells, within the cells. Now, the way this works is that the cells have what are called photoreceptors, and we all know that we absorb vitamin D through the photoreceptor molecule within our cells and our skin. But these photoreceptor molecules are in every cell in the body. And what they found is that our body emanates this light, and it's a communication. It's part of a communication network within the body that utilizes light. So I kind of like to joke that the hippies were right. Yeah, we are light beings, and now it's being proved scientifically. And this light, what's very interesting about this light is that it is very coherent, which means the actual photons are like a laser, and they are all going the same direction. And this biophotonic signal that happens within our bodies is more coherent than the best laser on the planet, which is pretty interesting. And what happens is when our cells are injured, that coherence is lost. It becomes from a laser to like a light bulb where the light goes every direction, so that communication drops. So what happens is by putting light on our tissue through this biostimulation method, where you're using either monochromatic red or infrared seem to be the most effective, what we're doing is we're getting more energy to the cell. We're circumventing that normal communication process, getting energy to the cell, helping the mitochondria. I kind of say it's speeding up cellular metabolism and getting that collagen, elastin, ATP, nitric oxide all moving at a hyper accelerated rate. And so it's just pretty amazing technology, and that's what I'm involved with. I built a very effective flexible light device. It's on a flexible circuit that has over 150 LEDs, and it's quite effective. And we found if we raise people's nitric oxide levels by giving them amino acids or beet powder, believe it or not, it creates this vasodilation, and in combination with the light, we're having great success.
Yeah, NO is very important to the human body. Daniel Brinkley, in your book Soul Code, you mentioned that he described seeing people during an NDE as points of colored light with a lot of space in between. He almost envisioned the fact that we're like 98% nothing. But he could see that the essence of other people, and I guess himself, were these points of colored light. Are there colors involved in the technology you're talking about as well?
Yeah, it seems as if, though, the color, once light is in a monochromatic form where we're taking and we're isolating either red, infrared, even greens and yellows, there are, it just has an amazing dynamic. Now, it's kind of early in the science, but some of the people in the cosmetics industry has found that different colored lights combined or used separately have a very significant effect. Now, when you get down to the violet light, it has a kind of a different mechanism where it's basically becomes antipathogenic. So it's a different mechanism, but yet violet light also is very biologically active. You just don't want to do too much of it at any given time. So we market a violet light basically for acne or bug bites or things that are happening on the skin to inactivate the pathogens on tissue. Now they're very short waves, so they don't penetrate the tissue very deeply. And then we have red, which is very good for healing things and kind of at a surface level or down, a centimeter or two. And then we also have infrared, which can actually penetrate all the way to the bone, which is very good at healing tendons and broken bones and stuff like that. So yes, there are different applications for different types of light.
You mentioned also in your book, Colton Burpo, and Heaven is Real, that he says it doesn't get dark in heaven. It's always bright there. And I guess as I was reading your book, I was because of your interest in light, I was looking for these little phrases that jumped out at me about the light. And there are also a lot of speculation these days about the connection between light and consciousness. Maybe we could talk about that a little bit.
Well, yeah, it seems from everything I've researched and the people I've interviewed, it seems like light could very well be consciousness. I mean, when people have these near-death experiences, they go to this other place, which is just a dimensional shift, basically, because I think that whole arena is actually coexisting within the space that we're in now, and that the beings out there are light beings, and that's basically what constitutes these energy fields that are consciousness. So there is definitely a connection between light and consciousness, and I think it's really time that science and spirituality start to bridge that gap, and maybe it's more than coincidence that my two passions are light and medicine and this metaphysical realm of our spirituality.
Because there's always that question: how can we get science involved in these things that they consider beyond the pale? Near-death experience research is always struggling against mainline science, and people don't even want to go there because they're afraid they're going to be discounted as scientists if they do.
Well, yeah, but when you start to do events like, I think his name was Hagelin, and they all prayed and projected this thought, and that thought would obviously be made of this spiritual light energy, and they I think it was like 4,000 people prayed and it was in a specific city. Sorry, I don't have more details, but the crime rate dropped significantly while these people were praying. So, and I think some of this might be the more that we can visualize light around people we're praying for. So when I do projected thought prayer, I actually visualize light around people in a spherical form, as my form of prayer. But yeah, you're right. There needs to be, we need to do more research in science and spirituality. HeartMath has done some amazing work, and there's other organizations that are pushing forward in this arena. When people have a near-death experience and can see for the first time, that's amazing. It completely, to me, that's pretty compelling evidence that our soul exists, and it exists on another plane of existence. But yeah.
Well, that notion of projecting ideas. I just recently watched the DVD of the movie Tomorrowland. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but the theme is that people are bringing on the end times by embracing the idea of the end of the physical world, by embracing basically despair over this world. And I noticed in your book there's a quote, Alberto Villoldo, I think his name is, evolutionary quantum leaps occur when a species is faced with extinction, and now we are at such a threshold. And I thought that was a powerful quote that sort of tied into this theme of Tomorrowland, that it's almost we are what we think we are, our future's going to be. That we're creating our own reality that way.
Well, without a doubt. Just look at it from a very basic level. When we go out to do a business project, or you're going to go out and you decide you're going to do NDE radio, or whatever we decide to do, we project that thought. And it's especially true with entrepreneurs. You have to visualize what you're going to do, work towards that objective. And somehow the mind is powerful, and what we visualize, we can create. The world is kind of an imaginary realm for us to be able to get creativity and move these ideas and these concepts forward. So if we are constantly indoctrinated or believing that is going to occur, whatever that might be, we're going to create it. So I think it's very, very important that we visualize light and love around this world. And, as hard as it is sometimes to visualize love around situations that seem so painful, that's where the love needs to be projected and it needs to be visualized. And yes, we need to see our success through these hard times. And that's one of the reasons, which we'll mention later, that I'm coordinating a symposium at the end of the month, because I'm bringing near-death experience together with other people to move this, what I see as important truths, out to the world.
Yes, that's going to take place in Texas, isn't it?
Yeah, in Austin, just south of Austin, Texas. Yes, we are coordinating an event. We're going to have people speaking about near-death experience, but other transformative spiritual kind of information as well will be coming to the table, because I want, in my book, The Soul Code, my point was to string a thread through near-death experience and other, spiritually transformative events.
One of the things that comes out in the book, of course, which, has been observed by a lot of people who've been studying this area, is that our physical lives really represent a small part of reality, that we are spiritual beings experiencing a physical existence, and the emphasis is really the spiritual. And yet, clearly you've mustered a lot of energy toward improving things here and researching things here and working in the field of physical light. Is there a contradiction? Do you see any kind of conflict between people who are interested in the spirit and people who are interested in saving the world?
No, I think it's one and the same to a certain degree, because I believe at a deeper level, our soul needs this DNA to exist in this physical plane for our spiritual growth. So they're actually working hand in hand as far as our physical body and our spiritual body to move, to keep moving the evolution of mankind forward. Because if if humans don't exist, then the soul is going to have less opportunity to come down here and evolve. So there is a connection between these 2 points. Is that kind of answering your question? I mean, that's my personal belief.
Mm-hmm. No, it does. I wanted to ask you too, if you could tell us how you define the soul matrix. It's a term you use in your book.
Okay, so what I found is while I was doing this research, years of research in this field, is that I found that there's certain words that kind of started to create a lexicon of sorts, heaven, God, soul, eternity, spirit, and these words are used a lot in different religions. And sometimes religions have dogmas connected to some of these words. So people, I've noticed when I start to talk about this stuff with people using these terms, the people that might be spiritual but non-religious, sometimes they kind of step back a little bit and they're like, well, what's going on? And not that the terms are inaccurately used by religion by any means, but yet it just sometimes they associate it to specific dogmas and different things. So what I started to do is change some terminologies. So I call heaven the soul matrix in the book, because it seems as if there's a lot of activity going on in heaven. And I kind of scrape across the surface of it in this book, but yet it gets a lot deeper, and I didn't want to go too far out there, too far down the rabbit hole with it. But it seems like there's whole communities out there in heaven, and that we are interconnected to beings that we've known for a long, long time. And some of these beings are relatives of ours, or some of these beings are just spiritual mentors. And so I was calling heaven the soul matrix. And because that's what it seems is going on out there. There's a huger, much more sophisticated picture of heaven than I think that we recognize down here.
But you do subscribe to the notion that we are evolving as a small community of relatives and friends, that we keep playing different roles in reincarnated lives?
In some instances, yes, it seems to point to that evidence that for some reason we do. It's almost like you got that really comfortable pair of jeans that you like to wear, and it seems as if our souls, our own DNA, over millennia, are places that we've been before, and it's a comfortable place to come back into our own family lives. Now, my book doesn't really focus on reincarnation, but that theme is very clear through the information that I have put together. And so it just seems as if we do kind of stay within those genetic lines, and because it's a comfortable place for our soul to come back to.
Well, some of the things you cover, and one of the reasons I think this book of yours is so good is because it's not only NDEs or OBEs, but it's also things like preconception memories of children born who can remember, before they were born, or time in the womb, what they heard, what they saw, and the life between lives is another theme that you touch on. And
the preconception memories is so surprising. I interviewed Neil and Elizabeth Carmen, who'd written a book called The Cosmic Cradle, and it was just amazing stories of what people remembered prior to their conception, and actually help and kind of picking the families that they were going to be born through. It seems as if there is an unconscious choice that parents make with these souls before they're conceived. And sometimes the parents are aware of these conversations, and sometimes it comes through dreams and messages, and it's just amazing. And one of the things that through researching this preconception memory is that it seems as if souls, but right before they dive into life, they say, okay, most importantly, I have to remember this place of light and love I come from. This is the most important thing I need to remember. And then as they're jumping in, they're saying, oh, even more importantly, I have to remember to spread this light and love while I'm here. And that seems to be a memory that I think we all had right before we jumped in, because the research tends to point to that. So these preconception memories are mind-blowing. The Carmens talk about a case where this being was with this person was with a being of light, and the being of light was saying, well, you can be born into this family. It's a very wealthy family. You'll have a really good life. And the being, I mean, these people were like getting close to that point to, they're in the bedroom. And then the being of light says to this person, well, or you can be born into this family. This is a middle class family. You'll have a good life, but yet you'll have a little couple, more knocks in life, and life will be a little tougher, and you'll learn more as a spiritual being. And then the being of light showed this guy a poor family that was actually in the front seat of their car because they were a poor family, and there was a baby actually asleep in the back seat, and they're getting ready to take care of business, and he says, no, this is a poor family. You're going to have the hardest life in this family. This is going to be a tougher life, but you're going to learn the most as a spiritual being in this situation. And the guy says, yeah, that's where I want to be. So as a kid, he remembers this, and he tries to bring it up with his mom, and his mom doesn't really take him seriously. And she's like, no, just go out and play with your friends or something. Just kind of ignores him. So this memory never left him. And so he's an older kid, and I guess he's moved out of home at this point. Oh, and by the way, he had an older sister that was that baby in the back seat. That's why everything kind of like made sense to him. And he brings this up. His parents, he says, look, I've had this memory. I need to bring it up and talk to you guys about it. So he talks about it and says, the car, and describes the car parked under a tree, the whole thing. And after he tells the story, his mom looks at his dad and she says, I can't believe you told him. And so it basically confirmed that everything he said was real. So we tend to have a choice of where we come in. And a lot of people, when I bring that stuff up just in personal conversation, are very resistant to that. And other people get it right away. And they say, no, you're right. I know I chose the situation. So, it really helps us to understand that we choose our path and our situations, and that we need to in some situations, people have had some pretty tough lives, but they need to recognize that they chose this for some kind of growth.
Right. Matt, excuse me. Before we run out of time, tell our listeners about your symposium.
Okay, so what I've got going is I'm working with Pat Johnson and Edward Salisbury, and they're both near-death experiencers, and we are putting together a symposium on April 30th in the Austin, Texas area, where we're going to have people talk about their near-death experience. What I've seen out in the community is sometimes these events can be very expensive. So what we want to do is make it very reasonably priced. It's like $20 to $30 to come and attend. And the other thing is, and that's a full day of lectures and then a social event at the end of the day. Where another thing, I've been to conventions, and it just seems like there's a disconnect between the near-death experiencers and the people. So what we're doing is we're doing two social. We're doing like a long lunch break, and then we're doing an after event dinner and kind of a social gathering, so people can really get some face-to-face time with these presenters and researchers and near-death experiencers, because I really feel it's important to connect with them one-on-one. And so we are trying to structure something that's a little more social oriented.
I was going to say, is there a site they can get more information?
Yeah, and if they, this is called The Wisdom of the Near-Death Experience, and the website is enlighteningarts.com. Enlightening Arts. And that's where they can get more information. And this isn't, this is basically a near-death experience, but we've got people that are going to come and talk about life between life and preconception memory. The Carmens, who I mentioned, will be there, and some other people that do that LBL stuff. Do we have a minute to talk about LBL or?
Well, no, we're really out of time. I do want to mention though that your terrific book Soul Code is available on Kindle for 99 cents. Isn't that right?
Yep, and they can get it hardcover as well for about $15. So
Terrific. Oh, thank you, Matt.
Thank you, thanks, Jay.
My thanks to Matt DeBow for sharing his research into the properties of healing light and most especially the contents of his new book, Soul Code. If you'd like to listen to this show again or any other of our previous programs, please visit our website at nderadio.org. And for more information about IANDS and our upcoming conference in July in Orlando, please visit that website at iands.org. This is Lee Witting saying thanks for listening.